So I'm here with Michael Crandell. He's the CEO of RightScale. Hi, Michael. How you doing?
Hi, Steve.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do here at RightScale, and something about the company?
Sure. So I'm CEO of RightScale. We are a cloud management company. In fact, we kind of pioneered the category of cloud management. We were born shortly after Amazon EC2 launched about 5 years ago. And the idea behind RightScale is pretty simple. It's just to help provide the power of infrastructure clouds to companies who want to launch applications and services on them. So you can think of RightScale as a bridge between all these infrastructure cloud resource pools from Amazon, from other public cloud providers like Rackspace and Tata and SoftLayer, and the apps and services that they want to run.
So maybe you can tell me what it is that RightScale offers to its customers. What kind of products and tools and software?
Absolutely. So we have a web-based software as a service dashboard that companies can enter into where they see all the infrastructure resources that they're managing, which really boils down to servers as a compute resource and storage and networking capabilities. And they can launch both individual servers and entire clusters of servers. We call it managing at the system level as opposed to at the server level. So they can launch workloads from inside RightScale, monitor them, automate how they behave. The classic example is so-called auto-scaling. That means when a system will expand and add additional server resources based on load that's applied. So the so-called flash crowd, where you get a whole lot of traffic or load on a system, or likewise batch processing, when there's a lot of work to be performed, additional resources are launched. And then all the way through to the tracking and auditing and basically governance of the use of those resources, the same way you would need in an internal data center.
So I see here we're at Cloud Computing Expo 11, and there's a conference within a conference put on by RightScale, which couldn't happen unless you had a budding ecosystem of your own. So tell me how you work with partners and why that's significant.
The partner ecosystem is absolutely crucial to our vision of what RightScale is. We have about 45,000 users who've signed up for RightScale. We do have a free edition of the product, which is important because it's been part of powering the cloud movement to let people experiment. Because cloud computing has been new over the last 5 years, it's important to provide an easy avenue for testing, proof of concept, experimentation. Now, back to the partner ecosystem, what's so important about that for us is there are really 3 different constituencies among partners. There are, of course, the cloud service providers, which include the Amazons, the Rackspaces, the Tatas, the SoftLayers of the world. Also, private cloud infrastructure, Eucalyptus, Cloud.com, OpenStack are systems that we work with. In the second category are independent software vendors. These are the folks who invent interesting and cool software, from end user solutions to componentry, and they want to provide it in a version that's easy to run on the cloud. So software vendors partner with us to provide cloud-ready versions of what they do. Examples are Zend PHP Accelerator, MySQL. IBM has partnered with us, for example, to provide DB2 database and WebSphere application server and their big data solution. And the third category is system integrators. These are the folks who've been around for decades helping companies complete projects, consulting projects, essentially for IT. And along comes this new thing called cloud. And so they have to expand their practices to deliver on the cloud for their customers. And many of them partner with RightScale to deliver those cloud projects on the RightScale platform.
Well, obviously, partner ecosystem is a reflection of the depth and width of a product line. And wasn't going to ask you a whole lot about the product because of what you said about the partner ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'd like to shift into the discussion about your customers and some use cases, some value that you bring to your customers and why they like you.
Sure. In fact, we're today holding our RightScale user conference here in coordination with Cloud Expo. And the whole theme of the conference, it's called Shared Cloud Experience. And the theme is around letting our customers and our users share with our partners what projects they've actually built in the cloud, what the learnings were, and what they've done that they would do differently or maybe that they would repeat. So it's around the community aspect. We had 4 customer speakers here today. One of them was Ubisoft. It's a social gaming company, a lot of popular games out there. And they talked about how they migrated from an internal data center philosophy to using public cloud managed by RightScale in order to meet the drastic, sometimes dramatic, scaling needs of these games that they write that basically zoom up so fast in terms of monthly active users. So Ubisoft was a customer telling that story. On the other end of the spectrum is pretty traditional enterprise Intercontinental Hotel Group. And they've been doing IT for 40 years, as long as IT has been around, essentially. But their real business, as they said, was heads on beds. That's their core competency, right? They're selling hotel space. And so they're using cloud to take on new IT projects as well as a transformational project for some of their standard reservation system and so on. But the first one they did was their Chinese web-facing property. And they developed that on the cloud, and they actually showed how they launched in the cloud a huge load test on the new site before it launched in order to validate that it could handle that. Then on another front, we have a company called Coupa. It sells software over the web. They've been a customer for a long time, and they shared how they've used the cloud in order to be able to meet their customer demand for buying software essentially 24/7 across the web. So lots of different customer examples. We also have a whole array of partners here, again, across the ISV, SI, and cloud service provider fronts. So it's the notion that the infrastructure layer by itself is not enough, right? So there's great power there. You can allocate 1,000 servers at the push of a button, but that's not the full solution. The question is, how do those servers configure themselves once they begin to launch? How do they group themselves into a coordinated, cooperating system where, for example, to get technical for a second, the load balancers know where the database is, where the application servers are, and so that they can intercommunicate effectively. And on top of that, how do you build in best practices for what we call operational excellence? So that when you launch a workload in the cloud, it's not just a question of, wow, I ran app X, but it's a question of, I launched the application, it knows how to back itself up, it knows how to handle failure scenarios, and there are already predefined procedures if I need to do a recovery and get up and running quickly. That's really operational excellence baked in. So we're really, you can think of us as an on-ramp. Sometimes folks use that name. Another aspect, as you said, is a trusted source of expertise as you're migrating to the cloud, so that you architect and design properly. Again, as we've learned, using the cloud is not the same as designing properly for the cloud. So there's that aspect to it. For companies that are perhaps a little larger, the reality is today there's probably already cloud usage and consumption occurring in your company. We had Stephen O'Grady from RedMonk was a speaker today also. And one of the stats I shared is for every project that you know about in the cloud in your company, there are probably 3 to 5 that you don't know about. And he shared his opinion. He said, I think that number's even bigger. And so there's another level of, I think, capability that larger organizations need to look at around cloud usage, and that's around visibility in addition to self-service. So that, A, just finding out what's going on out there so that you can begin to deal with all of the so-called shadow IT projects that have been spawned not out of any evil intent or rebelliousness, but just out of a desire to get stuff done effectively and quickly. But IT needs to be able to bring that in and have some visibility into it, continue to enable it, but get some control and governance at the same time.
So, what did you announce at this conference that would be worth mentioning, and tell us a little bit about the future going forward for you?
So yesterday we announced a new partnership with a cloud service provider called SoftLayer, which is important because they're very innovative around new models of launching servers in the cloud, not just virtualized cloud servers, but they can very quickly provision a bare metal server or a dedicated server. And they have very fast networking connections between their worldwide data centers. So they're a new partner. Just today we announced a partnership with a cloud service provider in Japan called IDCF Frontier. They're a subsidiary of Yahoo Japan. And so we have an additional, it's actually the first native Japanese cloud provider that we're powering and managing there. So that's really part of a larger trend, which is adding more and more cloud resource providers to our network of clouds that companies can manage under the RightScale management system. The other big trend we see is around so-called hybrid clouds, where companies are mixing their own internal cloud. They'll work with a company like Eucalyptus, Cloud.com, or the OpenStack software. They'll cloudify, if you will, internal infrastructure, and then they can bring it into RightScale and view it right alongside the public cloud resources. And we have a product called RightScale My Cloud in partnership with Eucalyptus and separately in partnership with Cloud.com, which makes it really easy to install their software orchestration layer, register it with RightScale, and get up and running quickly. And in a hybrid situation, what's interesting is what started out maybe 5 years ago, the truism was if you run things in the cloud, it's cheaper. It's cheaper because big cloud providers are able to achieve economies of scale cost-wise that we can't inside our own data centers. But we have customers today running hybrid clouds where for certain kinds of workloads, for certain purposes, they find it more cost efficient to run that infrastructure internally. And at the end of the day, whenever you can have choice and freedom of choice as to where you run a workload, which infrastructure you choose, that's the holy grail, that's the best of all.